Hey everybody, in this video I'm going to work on 4 single trunk bald cypress seedlings. So the history of these trees is they were planted as seed in very early 2024. They then grew unchecked for a year, and then they were all cut back and root pruned and then repotted back into their pots in early 2025, and you can see the cutbacks pretty plainly, and they were all cut at basically the same height all the way across, and then they were allowed again to just grow unchecked. So now I'm going to do the same procedure, except I'm going to take off, like this guy here obviously produced one really strong leader. And there's a bunch of little tiny leaders here. But I think, especially for the way the tree is moving, I'm going to take the little tiny leaders off and then cut this guy probably about half the length of here, so somewhere up into here. And you can see they're already sprouting. We've had a very weird year because it's been extremely warm and then punctuated by some heavy-duty cold snaps. In fact, January 31st, February 1st, that weekend I think it was, we had a record cold in the 25 for both nights. Oh, good. And I had a lot of damage from that, but bald cypress are, actually I brought these in the garage and then brought them straight out after those 2 days. So even a small plant like this with a small amount of soil, if the soil freezes, that plant is not going to do well because dead roots don't provide nutrients. That's like what dead men tell no tales, or something weird like that. Okay, so we don't really need to see the top of them. And I guess if we go like this, we can go, and you can see that they've all grown also very, very similarly in height. The extra growth from 2025 on all of them is almost exactly the same height. And that's, of course, they're in the same pot. They've had the same amount of fertilizer, same amount of water, etc., etc. So I'm going to do the same procedure for all 3. I am going to have to make some decisions on which leader I keep, but we'll do that with each individual tree. So this first one here is leaning. Quite a bit. And I don't think that's all that bad. Although I do want to take it out of the pot and just see what the roots look like. I may keep it at the same angle, and then just when I cut this part here, cut it to a bud that's pointing out like that. Okay, so if I cut it to this little bud here, then it's just going to keep going angled. So if we look at the roots, it's beginning to grow. That's why we have the nice white roots. And as typical with bald cypress, it produces a pretty heavy-duty taproot. And for some reason I've forgotten my root hook. Why do I do that? Well, just go get it. Okay, here we be. We ain't got no root hook. And in nature, bald cypress seedlings produce a pretty heavy-duty taproot that goes straight down, but of course there's nowhere to go in a pot. So the root usually hits the bottom of the pot, and then you can see right here it's just huge, huge root. So he comes off. somewhere about there. And that may be all I need to take off. Oh, there's another one. There's another one right here. Probably in the way, like I'm always in the way. And there we go. Not bad. Okay. Not bad. It's got a lot of very nice feeder roots. They're all feathered out pretty nice. You can see how the main taproot has gone, over and down, and that's because it's in a pot. And then I think about the only thing I really want to do is to cut some of the longer roots. Get rid of this crud soil, which I usually dry it out and then I use that for my... That looks good. I use that for the plants I put in the ground. I grow a lot of flowers and stuff. Okay. So now I'm going to straighten this guy up, probably. And try to get all the roots so they're a nice 360. So pruning the roots when they're young like this, one is to give them a whole brand new soil so the new roots can move out, which will stimulate new growth. And I forget what the other thing is. If you can remember, put it in the comments. Why did we root prune? Oh, and to keep the roots from circling like that. Okay, so now this guy was like that, but you notice he's not leaning anywhere near as much as he was. So do I still do this guy? Still going to take off all this little stuff. And then another part is, if I am going to keep this big leader, I need to get rid of this little knob. I think you can see that the knob itself is actually dead. So, right there, that is actually all dead. So I'm going to spin it around because I'm right-handed, and then take my concave cutters and try to make that a nicer transition. And boy, that really came out nice there. Okay, so now what do I do? I think I like the fact that it's a little straighter. So that means I'm now going to choose some guy over here, and I was going to go, it's about 1 hand high, so then go like half a hand high, so somewhere in here. So I'm going to take it, there's a little tiny bud right there, and I may actually let some of these grow for 2, 3, 4 years. Pretty much same way what I'm doing right now. And then I may take them way down and build smaller trees. But this process right now will give me a tree with much less circling roots, and it will be much more vigorous. See, look at how big those roots were. Much more vigorous growth, which will mean thicker trunk. And depending on my whim, because I can be pretty whimsical, I may just let these guys grow again. So the tip here, that's right here, that's going to grow out and be the new leader, just let it take off again. A whole nother year of unchecked growth. That's how you get thick trunks. If you really want thick trunks, you put it in the ground. I put some of the seedlings that are the same age as this guy in the ground, but they didn't perform well. I don't think they were in the right place. I just didn't have the space because I sort of stuck them underneath a bench where I walk all the time. And anyway, I guess there's no need to explain all that. But that's the first one. And they're all basically going to be the same. The only real question is, where do I cut? So like on that first one, I actually changed where I wanted to cut based on some nice white roots. And look at the circling roots. Oh, and it wasn't like a 6-inch bulb pan. You see how the roots were circling? I never know if I'm in the frame or not. But they're all going to be basically the same. Big, huge taproot. Here's the taproot on this one coming once again off to the side because the pot just won't let it grow all the way straight down. And then a lot of circling roots. Actually, I can't get it to where I want it because the thing's too tall. There we go. Now, there, okay. Look at those circling roots. So I want to get all that stuff out of there. And this is the time of year for me to be doing this. Actually, it's a little late, but we've had such cold. We've had cold fairly late. And in fact, we are actually forecast to get even more cold. Yeah, look at that whole taproot kind of. So that was a lot of roots taken off. And I already cut away the top so I could lean it like this, otherwise it was hitting the wall. So let's get rid of this soil. And the super high-tech pot cleaning. There you go, clean pot. And this is just real inexpensive potting soil. Nothing major. I don't spend $12 on a bag of potting soil. I think the potting soil I'm using here is like $3. So okay, get them in there. Feather some of the roots out so they're all 360. See, like this root here is, I want it to be more like that. More like that. So I'll hold him down as I'm putting the soil in. Okay, and now where do I go with the top? I'm going to take away those 2 small leaders. Not that I couldn't cut to there. If I wanted more taper and to create a different tree, I could certainly cut these off and take what I just did cut off and leave it and make it the leader. I don't think I'm going to do that with any of these trees though. So now we have a question. Which of the 2 leaders do I take? This one's a little heavier. This one's a little smaller. So I'm going to take the smaller one because I really don't think there's all that much difference. And the tree is leaning a little bit like this. So if we chose this, then it would be leaning even more. So this will bring it back more like a informal upright. So once again, try to get that so it's nice and flush. Oh yeah, very nice. I'm proud of myself. Hey, after 40 years of doing bonsai, I've learned how to use the concave cutters. All right. All right, there we go. You know what? I think I'm going to take this down a little bit more. And I think I'm going to take it to a bud that's shooting out this way. So I'll take it to right there. Okay. Number 2 is done. Number 3. Once again, cut the top off because we're going to be cutting it away anyway, so then I can actually angle it without hitting the wall. Nice white roots, so it's quite healthy. And they're all popping with new growth all over the place. And like I said, that's probably a little tiny bit late, but it's just been so cold for so long. All right. Am I still in the frame? So we can expect the exact same thing from this guy. I got some funky high roots here that, I don't know, I may save them. I don't know if they're going to actually do anything. This one's taproot really didn't materialize. But you can see, it almost looks like it reminds me of a old electric burner element. Where it goes around. I had one of those for many years. And then when I remodeled my kitchen, I got an induction stove. Oh, I love those. Had to buy all brand new cookware because my old cookware was aluminum and it doesn't work on induction stoves. Anyway, once again, I'm full of superfluous information. So there we go. Quite a bit more roots removed from this guy, but they'll live. And then I think I'm still going to go with just a heavy duty leader. I've grown bald cypress in the past, but not for a long time, so. And I think the scar is healing okay. It's still got a little bit of a knob. So let's just take it off. Take it off, take it off, take it off. I never was a cheerleader, I promise. And then whenever I pot up a tree, regardless of whether it's a training tree or a bonsai, I always like to make a mound with the soil. I take off this little guy here. Okay, once again, feather everything out so they're as close to 360 as they can get. I don't know why I'm leaving these taller roots, but looks like I'm gonna anyway. That one's already circling. And you notice I'm not jamming down. In fact, virtually at all. Just letting it, filling up the pot and then just letting it, it'll settle all by itself. So where are we at? Is that good? I think I'm going to take this guy down a little more. Just say like right there. So in theory this would be the front, and then we have a brand new bud right there that'll pop out and become the front. And even if the front is different, it'll still, I think, be a good choice for the leader. And then one more. And right now your brain may be saying redundant, 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 overload, overload. Let's go watch 3-year-old Korean girls playing the ukulele. Sorry. But you know, I don't really talk about politics on this channel because I don't really want to, but I have a political bent, so I read and I watch a lot of YouTube channels, and people are espousing this and espousing that and doing all the rest of this, and they get, 3,000 views, maybe 30,000 views, maybe 50,000 views. And then you can find 3-year-old Korean girls playing the ukulele that have 14 million views. So I guess that's pretty much an indictment of the human race. We'd much rather just be entertained with nonsense. Shut up, Alan, and just do bonsai. Who knows, these trees may end up all being placed together in a grove. Should be a very, very, very large grove. And another perfect example of the taproot. I still think it looks like a burner. See, there's the taproot right there. It hits the bottom of the pot and then can only really go one way. And that's another pretty heavy duty root pruning. However, there is a group, I haven't done it in many years, but there is a group that goes, I don't think it's too late right now, especially with the freeze that we're going to have. Well, it's not going to be freezing, but lows in the 30s in about a week, that go out into the wild and collect, trees with trunks as big around as this pot, even more. And so when you cut those out of the ground, you're left with almost no roots at all either. And if they're done at the right time of year and they're given the correct aftercare, they have a pretty good chance of surviving. I'm just too old for that anymore. I find that the older I get, the smaller the trees in my collection become. Easier to lift, easier to move around. Etc., etc. Do I want more in there? I remember Jim Smith. If you've watched any of my videos for any length of time, I talk about Jim Smith fairly regularly. He used to put a tree, and it didn't really matter what it was, to where the soil was up like this in a big mound, but never even touch it. Just put it into the pot and never juke it down at all. And so all his pre-bonsai had, soil like, I don't think I even have enough. Yeah, pretty much like that. Just, and every tree was like that, even higher. But I'm not him. And then the last thing we need to do, excuse me, holy cow, where did that come from? And the next thing we need to do is decide where we're going to go. And I think I'm going to go to the little guy. All right, there we go. 4 bald cypress. Year 3 coming up. And like I said, depending on what happens with them, my plan is to just let them do a whole nother. I guess I should chop this guy down a little more to be in keeping with all the rest of them. The proportions are very important, obviously. Bonsai is all about proportion. The proportions of a very classic tree where you just go, oh man, that is so cool. That's the single most important part about them, is the proportionality of the trunk to the branches, and the branches to the foliage pads, and the thickness of the tree to the thickness of the pot, and the position of the tree in the pot, and it goes on and on and on and on and on. So a lot of times we don't have to know all the rules to know that when we're cutting something and we like the way it looks, that it's probably following those rules. So there we go. For bald cypress. And now, since bald cypress are a swamp plant and they love water, these guys are going to be watered super thoroughly, like right now. As soon as this camera turns off, they go back out to the bench where they were, and they get watered immediately. And they remain watered every day until next year when I do them again. I never leave my bald cypress to get dry, ever. And some people actually grow them submerged. So let's pretend that this is a pot with no drainage. So they will literally take the tree and stick it in that pot full of water. And that's, for one thing, that keeps you from having to worry about whether they're being watered. But I don't like doing that. I think they lose the lack of aeration, and even though bald cypress can take it, they grow more quickly if they have really good aerated soil. You just have to remember to give them the consistent water that they need to thrive. So there we go. And bald cypress grow pretty far north. Of course, if you are north and you have cypress, you may be another month or more away from doing what I just did, because I'm in such a mild climate. And anyway, there's my super fancy technique. Rip the roots apart, jam them back in the pot, and cut off the top. Couldn't get any simpler. Anyway, thanks for watching.